Hello, hello, everyone. This is Andrew and JC, and this is yet another episode of Sasquatchers. I want to thank everybody for listening. We have a cool guest tonight that I'm looking forward to having a conversation with, and we'll introduce him after the intro.
The truth is out there. Never stop looking. Never be sheep. Always disrupt. We are the ungovernable. We are the truth seekers. We are Sasquatchers.
Then we are being joined by Shane Grove from the Shadows podcast, and this is part of like a sharecast thing that we did where we had a cool conversation with him right before this episode on his show, and so we invited him on, and we're gonna chat with him here a little bit on Sasquatchers. So without further ado, I'm gonna pass it over to Shane so he can introduce himself a little bit to you.
Well, Andrew and JC, thank you so much for, first of all, coming on our show and introducing yourselves to our listeners. And I appreciate you guys returning the favor and having me on. I mean, you guys must be really starving for entertainment and content to have me on. But I'm here to help shoulder the load if I can. So thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming on. And yeah, again, thank you for having us on your show. That was very cool. We've been doing a lot more of those recently, or we're on other people's shows, and it's fun because some of that pressure is off, and you're just kind of there in the passenger seat, just talking and having fun.
Yeah, look, I know you guys are in the infancy stages of podcasting, so to speak. And I remember those days where me and the rest of the from the Shadows crew, um, when we started, I mean, we had zero clue what we were doing. We didn't have a guy like JC and a guy like yourself who have done a lot of made a lot of content. I know you guys, we talked, you guys made wrestling videos and cooking and sewing videos and just about every other kind of video. But we didn't really have that. We started our show only because my co-host, now he's not on the show as much anymore, but we call him the Judge because he and I actually have the same first name, Shane. And he had an experience when we were in high school that's kind of I don't know, it's kind of a well-known dogman experience here in Ohio. And it was something that terrified him when we were in high school, and it was a lifelong search for him to find answers. And once he found some answers, he felt like he needed to tell people about what what had happened to him. And he felt, because of his standing in the community as a judge, I mean, he's a real judge here in North Central Ohio, um, that he thought, not that it made his story any more credible, but he thought that it would make people feel more comfortable about their stories and their experiences if he was able to come forward and share his. And so he went on a couple shows and the feedback was really good. And he's like, because this is what he does, he goes, "Hey man, we love talking about this stuff." And he goes, "I'd like to hear more people's stories." He goes, "Let's just start our own podcast." Well, we didn't know
Right.
anything. We didn't know anything about starting a podcast. And so because I had been in a movie with one of my buddies that we talked about, who used to be a pro wrestler, that they filmed here in North Central Ohio at the prison where Shawshank was filmed. It was called Escape from Death Block 13. And my buddy, the pro wrestler, Chris Hahn, he's like, "Hey, there's a guy that was in this movie that you were in a scene with, And of course, I didn't know this guy. I just met him when we did the scene. And he goes, he does a wrestling podcast over here for some of our wrestling. And so he got me together with Jason Lewis, and me and Jason and the judge. Uh, and in those early days, there's another gentleman, Jerry, who joined us for some stuff, started podcasting. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. And, but we did the same thing. You know, we reached out to a lot of other podcasters and so-called experts, um, to come on the show, and everybody was very gracious and came on. Nobody told us no. You know, well, Josh Gates has told or
Of course.
he's told us no by never answering. You know, I don't know.
Oh, at least he's just ignored you and not actually.
Yeah.
Well, we actually did have like sort of a connection to him, but we could never I could he's one of the guys I'd like to have. He's on the list of about, you know, a couple guys that yeah, you'd love to have on the show to talk and pick their brains a little bit. You know, not saying we'd hang it up and quit the show, but you know, it would be kind of cool. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
We did that with the Pope.
Yeah. Actually,
What-
some people might not know this, but the Vatican has an official email. So on our, I want to say, fourth, maybe fifth episode, we had a priest who was part of the church and recently had put out a book about being an exorcist.
Yep.
And
Father Vincent Lampert.
after we talked to the father, I thought it would be an exciting idea to kind of reach out to the Pope and see. You know, I didn't think that we would ever get a response, but I was kind of tickled by the idea of here is an intern in the Vatican who now is reading my invitation for the Pope to come on to Sasquatchers Paranormal Podcast.
Speaking of the Vatican, I'll tell you guys a story that I've never shared on the podcast. Was I actually got our payphone. So this tells you how old I was. So back in my high school, we had a payphone that was by the lunchroom, and I made a collect call to the Vatican during a lunch period, and the next week the payphone was removed from the cafeteria. Now, all we got when I called the Vatican and tried to call collect was some guy like talking in an Italian, like an Italian accent, like he had no idea, like, you know, I'm talking back and forth. And it was just, you know, a bunch of high school kids being stupid, and I hung up. But apparently then I found out that, well, I was there when one of my other buddies called somebody in Mexico City collect, and somebody answered. And so I think those two combined got the payphone removed from our high school.
Yeah. Don't call the Vatican.
Don't call the Vatican.
Or Mexico City.
Just leave the Vatican alone.
Yeah.
Whatever you do.
It's an expensive payphone.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's kind of our origin story is, you know, and that's how we got started. And people were very gracious to come on and be guests. And as we slowly built our audience and people got to know who we were, we got more, because we tend to want to talk to just normal, I can't use it, I'm using air quotes, normal people who have had paranormal experiences and want to come on and share them. That's who we really prefer to talk to. You know, not that we don't want to talk to other podcast people or people that have written books or stuff like that, but our fans love to hear those real experiences. Those and I think that is that's the purpose of our show anyway, is to get those experiences out there so people hear them and maybe feel more comfortable about an experience they've had themselves that they just can't come to grips with. and it makes them feel better. Maybe it doesn't make them feel better to know that other people experience the same thing, but it lets them know they're not alone and they're not crazy. Because I mean, and you guys have, 40 episodes in, I'm sure you've heard some really crazy things that are hard to wrap your minds around. Well, imagine being the person that is experiencing those things and not being able to, wrap their minds around, and to know that it's a real thing, that it's something that actually happened, and that you're not losing your grip on reality is
Exactly.
I think very therapeutic for people.
Yeah, therapeutic 100%. And like, I won't bore our regular listeners with me talking about all of my experiences again, and certainly
You
don't
don't
want
want to
to
talk about the UFO? Come on,
Oh,
I don't want
JC,
to
why don't
put
you tell the
JC to
UFO
sleep.
story?
just watch all other 39
Good.
episodes and you can hear it.
But because of that, I've been lucky enough to have these experiences and am able to relate to the idea of
Mhm.
the fact that this podcast is therapeutic. For instance, we had Preston Bennett on, and Preston Bennett, he's very well versed in ufology, and he kind of validated everything that I said about my UFO experience. So up until that point, I've been dealing with people who were like, "Yeah, whatever, you saw a firework, move on with your life." So even just having that person who has written
Mhm.
countless books and done many shows sit there and tell me that what I saw was fascinating and thank me for sharing it. That's the kind of thing that kind of blows your mind a little bit. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Well,
yeah.
in the judge's case, you know, it was reading a book by Linda Gottfried that kind of, because he has this experience when we were, like I said, we were in high school. It happened one night. He was out running on a country road, and the next night, a whole group of us were together, actually not that far from where he had his experience. And it was a group of guys. We all went to high school together, and we all played high school basketball together. And we were in our buddy's garage playing poker. Okay. And he's telling us what happened. And but he didn't tell us what he saw. Okay. He left that part out because he wanted to know what all of us thought this thing could have been in the field pacing him that he couldn't see. And and I remember like it's yesterday. Our one buddy who is now a Division One baseball coach, and him just sitting there going, "Dude, it was just a deer. Come on." I mean, I could see it like it was. And here's the thing is, so that story is from when we were 16 years old. So a long time ago. And when we started the podcast, our buddy who's the Division One baseball coach, and the other guys that were there, they're like, "You mean he's telling that story about that one night of the thing that was following him in the field?" So they remember it. Okay, they
Yeah.
just didn't get the whole story. So they 30 some years later still remembered what how he was acting, telling the story, how emphatic he was. I mean, even though they didn't know the full story, the story he told still resonated with them 30 some years later. And so when he finally, reading the book of Linda's, and he called me up and he's like, "Dude, I now I know what I saw that night." And I was like, "You saw that night?" I go, "You never told us and he started telling me, and he goes, "So if I'd have told you that's what I saw, what would you guys have said?" And I'm like, "Oh, we'd have told you were crazy. We'd have
Sure.
roasted you." Like, come on, man. And so when we were able to then finally have Linda on the show, she came on the show then, and she took his experience to another level because she shared with us some research she had been doing. And for those who don't know, Linda Gottfried is she was the reporter in Wisconsin where the quite a few farmers and people in the area were going to the police department seeing this upright dog. Okay.
Yeah.
And there was so many sightings that the police finally went to her. Like she went to the police saying, "Hey, I want to do a story on this." And they're just like, "Take the file. We don't know what to do with this stuff." And so she started doing her own investigations and research. And it was just, wrote books, The Beast of Bray Road, which got
Yeah. Yeah.
turned into a cheesy movie that a friend of mine
Sci
is in. It's
Sci-fi. Your friend is in the Beast of Bray Road. I love
Tom,
that movie.
Tom Downey. Tom
The
Downey is in The Beast of Bray Road. Yeah.
sci-fi original movie back when they were still good.
Yeah.
I
He,
had the
he
DVD.
he's yeah. Tom Downey is in that movie. I can't remember if he plays the sheriff or not, but we ended up having him on the show just to talk about the movie and what he thought about and then he ended up, like everybody else, he ended up having his own paranormal experiences that he shared with us, um, from out east, in Boston, from where his family vacations. But what Linda shared then was some stuff about Native American culture and how she had, started comparing Native American burial grounds to dogman sightings up there in Wisconsin. And when she laid a map of one over the other, it was eerily, they coincided with one another. Everywhere there was an Indian burial mound, there was a dogman sighting. And almost exclusively around these area Indian burial mounds were where dogman sightings took place. And so so it kind of blew our minds, like, okay, like how can that be there but not where we're at? Okay. And the judge's sighting took place, where he grew up on, and we all lived close to there. Our elementary school was right around the corner. And lo and behold, he got a hold of a map from Ohio that had Indian burial mounds. And in the two fields that were right next to the road and then perpendicular to the road were two Indian burial mounds. And we
Okay.
grew up there our whole lives. We had no clue there were Indian burial mounds there. But it took it to a whole new level, like, oh, okay, this is another layer to this. And so off we went. You know, when that stuff gets, I mean, I don't want to say validated, but when it gets, another level of coincidence, if you believe in coincidences, is shown to you, you have to start considering, well, there's more to it than um, just our imagination or a a missighting of something else. I mean, and what else came of it was that, he appeared on another show and somebody else wrote an email to that show who lived in the area but did not identify themselves, but described where they lived at about the same time, and they had a similar experience. And it just, one thing after another kept adding up, and then we're just like, okay. And so, um, you know, that was what shot us out of the gate and made us want to talk to more people about their experiences, And we've all had, the judges had some other paranormal experiences. I've had a couple of experiences that I'm not sure what they are, but you know, one's up there near, headed up towards JC, where he's at. Um, yeah, we had something in that area up there happen to all of us as a group. And so yeah, it's been kind of fun, um and just it's just interesting to learn this stuff. And the more you talk to people, um, the more you just know there's some stuff happening out there that we don't fully know. And anybody that wants to poo-poo it, they're missing out, and they're going through life with blinders on, which, hey, maybe it might be better to go through life with blinders on. I don't know
Yeah, I
sometimes.
imagine Sometimes, especially when you're in a high, a dog man is chasing you, it might be good to have those blinders. I find that super interesting because a very, very good friend of mine, we've met because of the shows that we do. Everybody knows him. His name is Matt Emsch. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not, but he runs the
Yep.
channel Planet 412 on
Oh, yeah,
YouTube.
yeah. I've talked to him a little bit. He had the Dogman experience in Youngstown. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's weird how that is. I mean, if I had to guess, probably around the same age group too. So
Yeah.
it's
Probably. Probably
that's
so.
super weird to me. It kind of stood out immediately that geographically, it's you guys probably are. I mean, you're in the same state. I'm not sure how far away, but
Well, and what's interesting is one of the earliest documented Dogman, like way before Bray Road, happened around Defiance, Ohio. Um, and they even have like a little. They've had like a Dogman festival up there. But in the early 70s, they had some instances around, I believe, a train yard up there where different eyewitnesses saw what they described was a werewolf or a dog walking on its back legs. And that's one that's well known to the people who are deep into it, but it's it's like an afterthought. Okay. But doing our show, we had a lady listen. Well, actually, she heard the judge's story and got a hold of us, and she had had a story down around outside of the Dayton, like the Germantown, Dayton area. Okay, and we didn't know, but there was a big dogman story from Germantown, and she didn't really even know it. Okay, but she had a dogman experience in the mid to late 70s, and it was way, and the judge will even tell you when we had her on, it's way too more terrifying than his experience. And um, it had bothered her entire life, and it was a story where her and her boyfriend at the time and another couple were down this road where the bridge was. It was one of those old country roads where the bridge was no longer passable. So you could drive down and park or whatever. And so as teenagers did back in those days, they were down there parking, messing around. And she said basically it was like a werewolf came up to the car. They saw it, and then it came up to the car and like put its hands. She did not say paw, like hands on the window, on the door, and like almost as if it was trying to get in. And so, I mean, it just terrified her. And of course, they took off, got out of there, and this thing had just tormented her this whole. I mean, because it was terrifying. Well, she reached back out to the guy, 30 years later, because she just wanted to know, like, what do you remember about that night? And he just goes, "It didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about."
mhm.
So he completely dismissed her, and she said, "That's it. I'm not going through my life like this." She reached out to us, came on the show, told us her story, and then what ended up happening is we um, Seth Breedlove and the Small Town Monsters people, Heather Mosier and those guys did a documentary called American Werewolves that came out last year, the year before, or whatever. And we were in it for the judge's story. And then she got to tell her story on that because I said, "Hey, this is somebody you need to talk to." And it just made her feel so good that somebody listened to her, believed her story, and that she was able to share it to even more people. And we were the first people she told it to. And that was after, it was that had been like 40 years by the time she told us. And and I get people like that all the time. I mean, I got a list of people who I have talked to who have reached out to me that that won't come on the show to tell their story. And their stories are fantastic stories of Bigfoot or Dogman or just whatever other paranormal. And I mean, most of them are Bigfoot because, they saw a Bigfoot and had an experience that was so terrifying that they just want to talk to somebody who will listen to them and believe them. And but they just don't feel like coming on the show. And it's like, oh my gosh, the podcaster in me is like,
Yeah.
please come on the show. This
Get
is be
on here.
yes, this would be fantastic.
Mhm.
But you have to respect their wishes, and just be thankful that they um trust me enough to call me up and talk to me
Absolutely.
off the air. And I don't mind. I mean, I have no qualms about talking to somebody now, and we kind of discussed this off the air a little bit. We do have lives that don't just involve doing the podcast, you know.
Unfortunately.
Not
Yes, and
anymore. I don't.
not
Well,
anymore. You don't. Well, okay, okay.
But
I mean, I
I
still have.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I still have a full-time job every day,
Yeah.
and trust me, I have been on the mail route with somebody telling me a Bigfoot story in my ear and my Bluetooth that ends up either coming on a show and becoming a guest or whatever, and it makes delivering the mail that much more fun because it's almost like listen to a podcast episode of somebody else's
yeah.
but it's you know and if you'd have told the 9-year-old Shane Grove that I would get to talk to people about Bigfoot and UFOs and just any of this stuff, and I'd get to do it and get look and make money doing it, getting paid because we all do make a little bit of money. It's well, I do. I don't know if you guys
Not
do,
us.
but 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 I mean, look, it's a job. I mean, it's a job, and we, and you do get to, if you get to a certain level, you do make a little bit from advertisers and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't think people should be under the illusion that we don't get, make some money. I mean, um, but if you'd have told me I got to make any kind of money or even get T-shirts or stickers or something, I'd have said, "Oh my God, sign me up." You know,
Right.
uh, I would have been like, just to do it for free. Which guys, like, we did that for the first couple years too. We did it for free. So, um, but but if you don't love it, there's no point in doing it. I mean, there's just no
Mm,
point in doing it, and I think you got to do it for the right reasons, and that's, especially this part. I mean, of course, there's 500,000 podcasts in the world today, and I think the people that do the ones similar to ours, um, most of them do it for the right reasons because they've had experiences and they just want answers. And are we ever going to get answers? I have no clue if we're ever going to get answers. I've got some answers off the air that I'm scared to death of, that I don't want to believe are true, but um it just makes getting up every day and wondering what's going to come next kind of an exciting adventure.
Yeah. That's kind of the payment for me. The 4 o'clock in the morning text that I send to JC because I'm obsessed with an
always.
idea, or or, or
There's
uh,
I get them all, like, even when there's not an idea, I get them. He'll just be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what do you think about this?"
but it's like it consumes me. This is what you know, I have the full time job. I have kids. I have a wife who has texted me 3 times, respectfully, not being mean or anything, but just like asking for updates on how our shows are going tonight. Like what time am I going to go upstairs and wake her up and You know, she's not going to be able to go back to sleep. Even if I turn the fan on high, she's just not going to be able to get back to sleep because I'm going to go up there after midnight and wake her up. And, you know, it's like all of these little things that people probably don't realize that we encounter and what we have to, you know, work around in our daily lives to do this. They really add up. So if you do not have that love, like the labor isn't worth it. And I think you see like the shows that make it are the ones that were doing it for those right reasons. And we had, I called it like we had a, I don't know, like a freshman class or whatever, so to speak. When we started doing this show, I, you know, did a deep dive on some of the other newer shows in the same field, obviously the paranormal niche. And what I've been able to do, well, number one, is make some like ridiculously good friends. The people who are doing it for the right reasons are genuinely very nice people. And I've gotten that feeling from you this whole time that we've been talking to you. Like I'm happy that I've been able to have a chat with you and to, you know, share experiences and learn because you just seem like a really genuine dude. And so I have made what I think will become lifelong friends due to this podcast. Last week, unfortunately, we had to cancel like 3 shows because I had to rush my son to, you know, Children's Hospital, and the guys that I am friends with due to just podcasting reached out and were supportive in ways that like nobody that in my life has ever been supportive in a way before. Like I can honestly say that my 3 best friends that exist in this world are because we share that desire to learn about the paranormal or share these experiences. And it it's easy to write paranormal stuff off from an outside perspective. And so the people who champion what we do, I think for the most part, are just really, really dynamic people, and they deserve the platform and they deserve to be heard. And you know, it's worth sitting up at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out what the next move is going to be.
I don't know if JC agrees with that, but you know.
Well, I mean, I don't. His messages are endearing. I appreciate the work that Drew puts in because he's like a psychopath about it, and I mean that endearingly, as endearing as that can be. But like the dude, he doesn't stop. And that's a positive thing, right? Like he wants this is his dream, and I'm in on it. I'm here for the ride. Let's do it.
Listen, and you say, okay, that you're obsessed and you're, you know, and that's why you're sending them. So I do some creative stuff on the side. I do some songwriting. So I write country music, and I know some, you know, I know some very famous people that will text me at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning because they're artists, and that's when they're on the bus after a show. They
got their mojo flowing,
and it's like so my phone is on awe. You know, I do not hear it when I'm sleeping because I do have to get up every morning at 5:40 to get ready to go to work, and but they're obsessed about the creative stuff that they do in a different avenue, you know, and when the mood hits you or an idea hits you or something like that, you know, look, you gotta share it, right? You gotta share it. And
and he does share it.
Oh my gosh.
Over the course of like 7 messages, he'll share
it. Yeah, I'm one of those guys.
Yeah. Hey, look, I used to get this. It was me and 2 other songwriters with this artist, and we worked on this song. Gosh, it was for a while. It was for a long time. But he would get in these, and I want to say manic stretches. where he would be like singing. You could tell he was in his apartment, and he was on a guitar, and he was singing, and you could hear the wheels in his head turning as he's like, okay, guys, I got this idea, and he'd be doing it, and you'd wake up in the morning, you'd be like, oh my God, what is he? But then you'd listen, and you couldn't help but smile because you knew. And the problem was, is the rest of us weren't up at 3 o'clock in the morning when he was to like respond immediately. And so by the time we got to respond, then it was another 24 hours before he got back up, and but it, but I totally get the obsessiveness and for that, I am not up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, no matter how obsessed. So,
Drew is. He's this man right here.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's you know, but that just shows you what this does mean to you, and
Yeah.
you take the good with the bad, right, Jason? You
Yeah.
just kind of roll with it.
Yeah, he has
Sure.
to. Once he keeps his phone on silent, he sees it in the morning. It's fine. I'm not expecting a text. Like if he texted me back immediately, I'd think his house was on fire or something.
I do.
But
I've occasionally texted you back at weird hours tonight, but for the most part, I get back to him about around like 9. 9-ish is about the time I start getting back.
when
But
it's
it's just
show related, I got to get it out because I
yeah.
get some of it. Also is fear, like if I don't put this down right now, 6 hours from now, I might not remember what I'm thinking too.
Well, this is
So
a songwriting at how do I want to say it? It's a song. It's an adage that if you have a great idea and don't write it down but can't remember it, then it wasn't that good of an idea. So if it's a great idea, you're going to remember it.
We wouldn't have anything that was the case.
but not to stray too far away from kind of the topics at hand. I was curious. You had said that you like your whole group experienced something, and I was curious because I hate that you're talking with us this late when you have to be up that early in the morning. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you. I'll give you a couple of the experience. So the first thing that I probably had was actually at the post office, which is kind of funny. The post office there in Bucyrus is the clerks. You know, they were, for the longest time, they'd be there at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and that's when the first truck would come in to the post office, and it'd just be one by themselves sorting mail, and every single one of them, the 3 or 4 of them, they all had stories about things happening, whether they heard somebody say something, or they heard noises, and they would go over to check, like the drop box from the lobby, because that's the freaky thing in there, is if you're in the back and in the morning, somebody can walk in the lobby, and it could play tricks on your ears, okay, and you think you might be hearing something because it echoes in this lobby. But they all would double check and swear that they thought that there was a little kid, or a little, I don't even want to say a little girl, but they all just thought that it felt like there was a kid messing around there. And so you'd hear these stories or whatever. And this is long before we ever thought about having a podcast or anything. And so I had a supervisor that she was sitting at her desk. I was the last carrier to come back on a Saturday. And as I walked in, the truck driver who was there to pick the mail up walked out past me. And the supervisor's desk was like in the middle of the room. And I looked over, and I'm not talking like 100 feet away. I'm talking like 20 feet away. And I look over as I'm pushing my car over to my case, and there's this girl standing there right now. The supervisor's sitting at her desk. The girl's at the corner of her desk, and the girl just kind of looks at me, smiles, and nods at me. Okay. No, I knew the supervisor had a daughter that would have been about the age of what this girl looked like. So I went over, got into my case, getting my mail that I brought back, sorted around, and I leaned back out and I'm like to the Ellie was her name. I go, Ellie, where'd your daughter go? And she looked at me and she goes, my daughter's not here. And now the night before, another carrier who had two daughters was in there when I got back, and her daughters were running around. Okay. And she said, you're thinking about yesterday with the other ladies with when her daughter. And I go, no, Ellie. I said, when I walked in here, there was a girl standing right at the corner of your desk who smiled at me. And I go, I thought that was your daughter. And Ellie's face lost all the color in her. I mean, it went totally white. And she goes, what? And I said, there was a girl standing right there. I saw her. I go, I nodded at her. She smiled at me. And I go, I just thought it was your daughter. And she goes, it's only me and you in here now that the truck driver left. And I just go, oh, okay. That was it. That was it. And so it's so what that so that experience right there, if I had never asked her where her daughter went, I'd have left thinking her daughter had been there and was like maybe in the back room, going to the bathroom, whatever. I'd have never known that little girl was not there. Okay. And so it always leads me to believe is when you're out in a crowd, okay, say you're at the county fair at Cedar Point at a Browns game or something. How many of those people aren't really there?
Oh
Like,
man, you're blowing my mind now.
All
you
of them.
know, you know what I'm saying? Because I saw firsthand, like the girl was there, but not really there. I
Nope.
I got no explanation. I mean, and I'd have never said I saw a ghost. I thought I saw a little girl. I mean, eh, so I got nothing. I got nothing for that except that I saw this little girl standing there. I mean,
At
I don't
least
know.
it was like a pleasant exchange, and you guys
Yeah.
exchanged like
Yeah, it
smiles and
wasn't
nods.
horrible. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
She
It
wasn't
wasn't like
horribly disfigured.
like didn't like so and um there's been a couple other like ghosty things there, but when you guys had in our episode asked me, about coming up and the next time you guys do something in Kirtland, and I said, well, I'm way too smart for that. Okay, to go out and all the guys. I mean, everybody wants me to go bigfooting and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
the one time that we did go out, so we had made friends with guys that had a podcast up in the Oberlin area. It was called Paranormal Road. Okay. And I got to be good friends with one of the guys, is Dave and Randy, and Dave Hensley and I got to be good friends. They were on our show, we were on their show. And Dave and Randy had a camper at a place outside of Oberlin called Sean Acres. Okay. And it's not, it's spelled SCHAWN, whatever. So he sends me a text one time. And he says, "You're never going to believe this." Now, Dave and Randy were paranormal investigators, and they had the ability to, like, they were empaths. They could get messages, stuff from the other side, um, or ghosts or whatever that were there, or whatever. They had that ability to. They weren't psychics. I'm not going to say they were psychics, but they just they had a paranormal kind of intuition that they could communicate. So so Dave texts me and he says, "Hey," he goes, "something really crazy happened this weekend at the campground. 7 or 8 of us heard something in the woods." And so this woods that's behind Shawn Acres is a woods that travels then along that river and then becomes part of the Cleveland Metro Parks. Okay. Yeah. And so
I hug.
I said, so what happened? And he said, well, we heard this howling in the woods. And he goes, it just totally, every single one of us in these 6 or 7 campers came out of our camper like, what the heck is going on? And nobody could figure it out. He goes, so I got on because he's doing his show. And so he's like, man, is that a Bigfoot? Like, did we hear a Bigfoot howl? So he gets on and he finds this recording, and it's part of the Sierra sounds that he found. Okay.
Okay.
So he texts it to the group, and they are like, you recorded that? What we heard last night? And he goes, this is from like the 70s in California. They're like, what? That's exactly what we heard. So then they are talking about it, and a lady who camps there all summer long, not just there on the weekends, but she's there during the week, um, tells them, yeah, that I hear that all the time. She goes, I don't even let my dog out at night during the week when I'm here by myself, because she goes, it won't go out. It's scared of what is out there. And they're like, what? And so they're talking about, Bigfoot and stuff like that. Well, the manager of the campground is an older lady, and she hears them as she's walking by, and she comes over and she says, I don't want you guys talking about Bigfoot. I don't want to hear that. I don't want people thinking there's a Bigfoot here or whatever. So he tells me all that, and I'm like, okay, what the heck is going on? So that is like in 2019 when he's telling me that. So here comes 2020, and over the winter, once they get back up to the campground, the campground manager, she comes to him and she goes, I got to talk to you about something. She said, my granddaughter and I saw it. Like, what do you mean saw it? She goes, we were driving down the road on the backside out there, and she goes, we saw Bigfoot. It crossed the road, went down this farm lane. She goes, I went after it in my car to see how, and it took off, it took off. And so he calls to tell me that. He goes, I think you guys need to come up and do an episode here at Shawn Acres. And I don't know if you guys know Amy Boo, but Amy Boo is a well-known Bigfooter here in Ohio, and she was good friends with Dave and Randy. And so the whole idea was in July of 2020, right, we were going to go up to the campground. We were going to do a live. Well, we were going to record everybody, and it wasn't going to be live, but it was going to be a podcast where we were going to have the campers that heard all this stuff with Amy Boo, and we were going to have this. It was going to be a cool kind of round table thing that we did at the campground. And then we were going to go out into the woods afterwards, not to record anything, but we were going to go do some searching. And I'm like, whatever, like, okay. And so we do our podcast episode, me and the judge, Jason, our buddy Jerry, a couple other people, Dave's son, I think his 2 sons were there. We all go out into this woods, and there was 2 guys that were supposed to be leading us through this woods. We had never been in these woods. I had no idea what was on, what the layout of these woods were. I didn't know any of those circumstances. So we're in this woods, and it's so hot. It's July, I mean, the sweat's pouring off of me, pouring off of all of us. And we had 2 um I don't know that they were FLIR, but they were infrared cameras. Okay. So everything was charged. And I can't even tell you how far back in the woods we were, but we were back pretty far. And we get back there and there's like 11 of us. Okay. So what are we going to see with 11 of us traipsing back in the woods? Nothing. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking this is ridiculous. So as we stand there, the infrared stuff goes dead. Both of them go dead.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Oh.
And and we're just kind of like, that's kind of weird. So as that happens, now the two guys that are supposed to be leading us have like walked off into the distance. I can't see them, but we're all standing there, and I'm like looking for these guys because like where, and I see this red light. Okay. And I just see this red light off in the distance. You know, I don't know how far away it was. And I lean over to Amy Boo and I said, "Do you see that red light?" And she looks up, and as she's looking, a second red light appears. Now, I'm just going to say it looked like a pair of red eyes because that's the distance they were. Okay. I, I I'm just saying that. All right. And she goes, "Oh my God, I do see them." And when she says, "Oh my God, I do see them," one that just opened up, blink just goes out, then the other one goes out. And I'm like, what the heck is that? Now, keep in mind, I have no idea. Am I seeing through the woods and I just saw some taillights? Was it those two knuckleheads that were supposed to be leading us around? Did they have red lights on their head or something? I even thought, was it a reflector on a tree? And these guys were shining their lights on. I'm sitting there trying to think of what this could have been. And Amy was getting she's like, "Let's walk up there and see what we can see." So we get up. I don't even know how far, 50 yards. I don't think we went 100 yards, but we got up far enough that you could see that we were not looking through the woods, that there was a hill that went up. Okay. So we were looking into the middle of this hill. So here comes the guys back. And I'm like, "Come over here." And I make them turn around and I look, they have nothing red on them. Okay.
Okay.
There's no reflectors in the trees. So Amy and I are on the same wavelength, and she goes, "Okay." And she's a teacher. So she's feeling responsible for all of us kids, so to speak. And she goes, "You know what? Let's kind of spread out a little bit, but let's just stand and listen and just see what we can see or hear." So I go out towards the front with another guy, and we just all are kind of quiet and listen. And all of a sudden, it feels like I'm standing in a stream of ice cold air. Okay. Now, remind you, I'm sweating so bad, it's dripping down my face. Okay. There's no air moving through this woods. And all of a sudden, it feels just like somebody just. And I look to the guy next to me. I go, "Can you feel that?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And it's just ice cold. Like I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. So we go back and I go, "Amy, you're not going to believe." And it didn't happen to anybody else, just us two out in front. And she's like, "I think it's time for us to head back to the campground." And so we get back to the campground, and then the next day, Amy and I got on. We did a podcast episode talking about because we wanted to have it fresh in our minds, talking about it, and
Of course.
and it wasn't like we were saying. I don't, I don't think I don't know what happened. Okay, here's what I know happened: the FLIRs went dead. I saw two lights that blinked out. That I can't explain where they were coming from. And then I was standing in the middle of a woods in the middle of July when it was 90 degrees, and then a stream of cold air enveloped me and another guy. Those three things happened. Are they combined? Do they mean something together? I have no clue. But the next episode of Sasquatch Chronicles, Wes had somebody on that talked about that they saw two red eyes out in the woods. Then the next summer, Dave and Randy finally went out into the woods because I asked him after we got back because I thought it was something maybe paranormal. And I thought, man, those guys can sense that stuff. Maybe they can go out there and sense something. They're like, we're not going out there. Well, they finally went out. They finally then had 3 or 4 people from the campground see what they described as red eyes in the woods that they saw. They went down in there and people in their group experienced what they described as red eyes in the woods. Now, they did not pick up anything that they thought was paranormal, but they all saw red lights. What they were, I have no clue. Sadly, Dave, we were going to go back, and that would have been the one place maybe I'd have went back with Amy Boo and that. And Dave passed away probably the next year in 21 or 22. So we never did really go back. Now, I think Randy's still up there and he'd gladly have us come up and do it. But it's just, I have no clue what happened. I just knew it wasn't normal. And Amy, who is a very experienced Bigfooter, is out in the woods a lot. She's part of the Olympic Project out in Washington. And they go way out in the woods, and do stuff where people aren't, and she was kind of like dumbfounded by it too. So I'm not here to tell you I saw Bigfoot or something, but there was something but it goes back to kind of the discussion that we had. Maybe it was on our episode of, a lot of times some things that happen in the woods, if they happen in your house, you'd say our house is haunted. And why don't you say the same things out in the woods? I have no clue. I have no clue what that was, but I wasn't the only one that experienced it. And, but that was just enough for me to say, okay, like, what if that had been a 9-foot, 800-pound gorilla that was mad?
Still bashing your brains out, right?
Yeah. I might not be here telling that story, but but that's so I don't know what that is. I don't know what that was. I mean, I got to say it was strange. But like I said, I'm not ready to say, well, that was Bigfoot. It was something, but I don't know what.
Well, something works.
Yeah, it was something, and I don't know. I still can't believe that with all of us out there that anything happened. But
yeah, that's a concern of mine right now. We are actually going to do something similar here in June. And we're going to go out and we're going to do a Sasquatch excursion. And there's a solid handful of people who are joining us. And that's been a fear in the back of my mind too, is that, if there is something out there, are we just going to be loud and trounce and disturb it and chase it away? So at least what you just told me gives me hope that will actually pan out for us.
Well, the key to going out on a thing like that is that you got to make sure that there's one person in a group that can't run as fast as you, so that there's somebody left behind if you have to take off.
It'll be me.
Or you're not afraid to push somebody down to get away.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bring
Also
a club, take out a kneecap him for all of his sassy comments. But hey, you know what? I feel like we accomplished it. We're hitting an hour, and again,
that went quick.
that was a real fast hour, and then, we did talk to you on your show, so that's actually 2 hours that we have now sat and
Yeah.
chatted.
Yeah.
I
It
know.
was a
I
very
know.
fast 2 hours, and I very much appreciate that you allotted that
Oh,
time for us.
so
But
much. Thank you so much.
it's late, and you need to go, to work in the morning. So why
I
don't you go
do.
ahead and tell everybody where they can find your stuff if they're not familiar with it, and then we can wrap it up.
Hey, look, if you're not familiar with the From the Shadows podcast, shame on you. No, I can't. I gotta hand it to you. You got great taste. Um, but you can find us everywhere at From the Shadows podcast, um, YouTube, whatever. You can just go to our website, From the Shadows podcast, and it'll take you to any podcatcher, our TikTok, our Patreon, everywhere. If you want to follow my stuff, you can just find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author. Um, you can uh, you can dig into all the music and movie and stuff that I'm involved in on the side, which is kind of fun. And we always kind of, we bring it into the podcast because we do every Friday we release a paranormal episode, but on Wednesdays we have an episode that we call the Midweek Howl, and it is, well, we think it's funny. I'm not sure anybody else does. But when we started the podcast, I had a friend through music and movies who he used to be a highway patrolman, a sheriff's deputy, homeland security, and an air marshal. And he lives in the Ozarks. Okay. And he
All
is one
right.
of the funniest storytellers around. But we could not use his name, so we gave him the moniker the Ozark Howler. So then the funny show became the Midweek Howl. And he started out by telling, like, if you go back to the early part ones of those, there's some of the funniest arrest stories you've ever heard. Okay, because he just has a way of telling those stories. Now it has evolved into, and it's taken a life of its own. You're basically listening to an hour phone call or half-hour phone call of me and him every week talking about stuff and or whatever. In fact, this week's episode, when we're recording this, we teamed up with Wes from Sasquatch Chronicles to do a historical World War II episode on a story that Wes included in one of his uh, regular Sasquatch Chronicles uh,
Nice.
episodes that he likes to do, but his fans don't so much love. They just want Sasquatch all the time, and and so he's just like, hey, dude, take this and run with it. And we kind of ran with it and put our own little twist on it and stuff. And it's a lot of fun to do those episodes, and the people that are in on the joke really like it. Um, it but I have to put a disclaimer out every at the beginning that this is not a paranormal episode because the people that are there just for Bigfoot, they don't always appreciate some of our some of our stuff. But it's a lot of fun, and like I said, we've made a lot of good friends from fans, and I think we have a great community there of people, and yeah, it's fun. I mean, and like I said, we do it because we love it. So if your listeners want to come over and hang out with us, they're more than welcome.
Go
Just
hang
search,
out.
go come hang out and join in the fun or not the fun. I don't know, whatever. If you're a masochist and don't want to really have any fun and
Mm,
torture yourself, then go, come on. So, but no, hey, I appreciate you guys coming on our show, and thanks for having me on yours.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. We should do it again
100%.
sometime.
Yes.
Uh,
Hey, listen, the next time I'll bring the judge with me. He has one of the best. Well, it's one of the worst, but it's one of the most fascinating ghost stories. And he's told it on some shows. Man, he can barely get through it. It chokes him up so bad. So
oh, wow.
I think you guys would dig hearing that.
Oh yeah,
It's a
for sure.
really crazy ghost story. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll stay in touch, and we'll do it again.
All right, awesome. Yeah, everybody listening, if you haven't checked it out already, go check it out. And we'll include all the show links and stuff for everybody if they are not watching the video to see the link right now. Thank you again, and good night, everybody. We're gonna hit the outro here.
All right.
Thanks for squatching, everybody.
Squatch you later.